The Sacred Union podcast is an epic deep dive into humanity's purpose at this time of planetary change, into the union of soul and body and what it means to truly live from soul. It is about the union of masculine and feminine and patriarchy and matriarchy into a partnership culture. It is more than just a podcast. It is an experience, a transmission, an intimate meeting with people who are creating the more beautiful world our souls know is possible. Welcome to this episode. I am Bibi Grazza. I am your host, and I have the honor to introduce you to Richard Bartlett, a community builder, a writer and facilitator exploring new ways of living, working and being together. He's stewarding Casa Tilo, a retreat space and community hub nestled in a forest outside of Barcelona. He co-founded Loomio, an open source tool for collaborative decision-making used by communities and social movements around the world. He helped build Enspiral, a pioneering collective for high-trust collaboration, and later launched Microsolidarity, a network of mutual aid communities dedicated to belonging and transformation. Through the hum, he's spent the last decade helping mission-driven teams navigate the beautiful mess of decentralized organizing. I have met Richard many years ago through the Borderland community, the Swedish Burning Man, and he gifted me his ticket, which was an experience in itself because he never had met me and he didn't know anything about me. And at that time I had very little financial power, and so I always remembered him until we met by chance a year later through a common friend. And I have never forgotten him ever since, and asked him if he wants to come onto this show to talk to me more about his work, about community building, about new ways of decision making, and what really changes when we use community in the way that it's most nourishing, and also what's the difficulties around being in community and decentralized governance. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's dive in. Welcome on this podcast, Richard Bartlett. I'm so honored to have you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So people will have just heard a little bit more about your bio, and we're going to dive into that. But before we're going to dive into your story, I would love to ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear Sacred Union? The first thing.
Sacred Union, I'm thinking about how we are not really individuals. You know, like we're kind of individuals, that we have, like I have a skin boundary, but so much of what it means to be a me, it's kind of like leaking out or interpenetrating with the people around me and the ecosystem that I'm in, and the people that I'm with have such an influence on what I can see, what I can think, what kind of actions come out of me. So what comes to mind is the union of like participating in larger superorganisms.
I love that. It's so juicy to ask people this question. There's something different that comes out, and all of them are like true and reveal something bigger about this. Yeah. So I would define you as in some way an expert of collaboration. That's like really a big theme that your life is about. And you also shared in your bio that you are looking for another way of living, working and being together. And I would love to go back a little bit into your story of like, what was that made you look for another way?
I think I've had some tastes of it, you know, at different points in my life where I could see a much better way of living. And it's always like limited, or it's like one fraction of what's needed, and it's not a whole circle. So the way that I was raised, I grew up in a really very kind of old-fashioned, very strict Christian community. And the strict part was not very nice, but the community part was pretty great. yeah, I've had these memories now as an adult, of reflecting back on what it was like to be quite young and knowing that, in our church congregation, there was probably 30 or 40 families, and pretty much all of them, if something terrible had happened to my parents, I could have just kind of been moved to another family and been taken care of and been treated as part of, like living in the sense of extended family that we have shared values and shared care, like that people are invested in each other's lives. And um, when someone has a baby, like all of the other families in the church are going to organize so that they're bringing meals around, and that kind of very just practical being involved in each other's life thing was pretty awesome. And like eventually, as I was growing up, I had to leave the church because I just couldn't really stand the ideology of it. This very strong pressure to conform. It didn't really work for me. Um, but the sense of belonging and the sense that people have your back, like it's pretty amazing. And so definitely that was like one formative experience for me that said, I want the belonging and I don't want the conformity. Is it possible? Is it possible? Like, can you have this really deep sense of mutual commitment without completely collapsing everyone's differences into
Mm,
one unified, solid mass where everyone has to kind of think the same?
mm,
That was a big one. And then in 2011, quite accidentally, I got involved with the Occupy Wall Street movement.
mm,
And this was like, in a way, I guess it's like a political Burning Man or something, like um, a little temporary set apart universe where we run society on different principles. And in our case, I was in New Zealand in Wellington, and I think we had our camp running for like 2.5 months, maybe 3 months, like quite a long experiment to run in the middle of the city with a few hundred people. And we just got to experiment with like, okay, what if we had a little village where we basically organized on consensus and we have a big meeting every day and people talk together and think together about how do we want to run and what are our values, and um, like we're going to figure out based on donations and collaboration, everyone's going to get fed and no one's going to have to pay for it. And we're going to run like a experimental open university, and there's like constantly interesting lectures happening and you can just participate. Or there's like um 24/7 hospitality service, that there's always someone there with a cup of tea that's interested to talk to you. And like um obviously it's temporary, like what we were doing with Occupy couldn't last forever, but this like visit to an alternative reality to say like, hey, we're going to operate on different principles. We're going to try and avoid using coercion and this like top-down hierarchy way of organizing. Yeah, we're going to embody different values and just see what it's like to live there. That was pretty amazing too.
mm,
And then I think the third one that comes to mind was just a couple of years where I was living in a neighborhood. Like in New Zealand, it's really common for people to live in group houses, sort of like from the time you go to university until maybe, you might in your mid 30s do the thing where you like get married and have kids and go move out. But there's a sort of like 10 or 15-year period where everyone's living in group houses. And we had a couple of like a golden age, like a sweet spot where uh there's so many of these group houses all within walking distance of each other or cycling distance of each other, with this like overlapping identities and sense of like yeah, sense of being part of some extended universe that you don't quite know where the limits are.
mm,
It's like, oh, I'm every other week I'm visiting one of these other six houses, but I know that there's another ring of like 50 houses around them that I'm sort of have contact with, but not very much.
mm,
And the sense of like, yeah, deep collaboration that's emerging, like um, arts and music collaborations that are happening, new businesses that are starting, political activism that's starting, new relationships that are forming out of this like very densely woven social fabric. Um, that was also incredibly inspiring for me. And I think other people have had this experience at university, maybe, that there's a couple of years where it's like, wow, we really have all of the social interaction that we really want.
mm,
And then things change, and yeah, you have a more isolated, more private life. And those are like three different chapters, I think, where I got a taste of there's a way of living. It's maybe somehow limited in a certain way, but it feels like a really promising prototype. And like if we could keep, I'm trained as an engineer, so I'm always thinking of like systems and like what are the design parameters to can we make that more sustainable, more permanent, more inclusive? Like,
Mhm.
can this just is there an alternative than the way that we normally live that's more satisfying?
Mhm. I love that. So right from the start, there was an awareness of how the world maybe works differently in community, but then this bigger question of um, how could we live more freely and more as in like live out our individuality in some way in this very collaborative, supported sense. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, yeah, like it's freedom in the sense of like I want authenticity, like I want to be myself.
Mhm.
Um, but ironically, it also comes with a lot of obligation. And it seems like actually there's a very sweet kind of obligation. Like when I said about having each other's back, I mean, like technically, yeah, you're free whether or not you support the person, but the whole community works because we have kind of collectively agreed we are going to show up for each other. Like we are going to prioritize these relationships, and like in a sense, it's limiting my freedom, but that these obligations are joyful and they're reciprocal, and they like everyone can kind of feel intuitively that it's worth making these sacrifices. It's worth putting someone else's needs ahead of my own sometimes. That yeah, it's not freedom for me is not like the essential value.
Yeah, okay, I hear that. Can you be more specific in maybe naming an example that happened to you on this journey of different collaborative projects where you were authentic in yourself, but also
Mhm.
I hear almost like a, I don't know, a sacrifice, but not in the martyr kind of sense, but in the sense of like being of service or devoted
Mm,
to.
mm. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example. I mean, like in one of these group houses that I lived in,
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's hard. It's not a real sacrifice, but it's kind of like putting other people ahead of ourselves. We just had a ritual of every Wednesday night, our house becomes sort of like a community center. And we have a dinner and we're gonna open and sort of like provide for others the space that's like we're gonna we're gonna cook you good food and we're gonna introduce you to awesome people and we're gonna hold a certain kind of social container. Um, like that became an institution. We ran it for many years and like amazing new relationships came out of that very simple ritual of like a Wednesday dinner party. Um, in some sense, sometimes it would have been easier to just say, oh, I want my privacy today, or I want to do my own thing. But by stepping into that commitment of like, no, we're just going to be here every week. And if there's someone new in town or, someone's dog just got run over or, it's like everyone knows like on Wednesday night we go to that place and that's going to be this warm, yeah, this community fire is going to be burning there.
Mhm.
Um, like I say, it doesn't really feel like a sacrifice, but it is, putting some kind of collective intention ahead of the individual.
Yeah, I hear commitment, and there's some form of sacrifice in that, I would say.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that example. It makes it more real and more alive.
Hmm.
Yeah, and also the simplicity of something like that is quite yeah beautiful. And then you took it kind of to the next level, the whole collaboration theme, community theme, and you developed. You mentioned systems before. You developed Loomio. Do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah. So Loomio, it's a digital platform. It's a discussion forum with decision-making features in it. So it's like basically what happened was we got super inspired. Me and my friends got super inspired during the Occupy movement because for me, it was like my first time doing consensus decision making. Like I'd never had that experience where it's like everyone's voice is important. We're all just going to listen to each other and we're going to figure out what can we agree on. And we're just going to take the time it takes to build agreement.
Uh-huh.
Like that blew my mind
And
and
I
kind of open.
pause you there actually because there are some people maybe who have never heard of consensus before. And if I understand it correctly, it's like not everybody has to agree, but nobody has to disagree. Is that
Yeah,
right?
right. Right. Yeah, and there's like different subtleties to this, but to me, yeah, the important thing is treating everyone's voice as if they're important,
Yeah.
that like we're not leaving anyone behind. And yeah, they don't necessarily all have to see things exactly the same, but that we can, for example, one way to implement it would be um we're going to go through some kind of discussion process, and at the end, everyone agrees this is the best decision we could get to.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, like I'm satisfied that my opinion has been heard and we've considered the options and this is the best we could get to. Um, that it shifted my understanding of like how people can relate to each other. You know, coming from this religious background and then from the engineering school and working in an engineering firm, everything's so very top down that there's like some central authority that knows what's going on. And this really like flipped things upside down to say, no, everyone has a part of the truth. You know, like if you want to understand something really deeply, you need to take many different perspectives into account and build a like 360-degree picture. Yeah, it's so hard to describe for someone who hasn't done it, but it just really sent like an earthquake through my system.
Mhm.
Like, it really shifted my expectations of what we're capable of.
Mhm.
And so Loomio came out of that inspiration of like, okay, involving more people in decisions, like to be involved in decisions that affect me is really enlivening, like inspiring, energizing, empowering. So let's build technology that makes it easy for other people to do that. Um, and I just, engineering background, lots of technology friends, like we just got together and built the software company to like support collaborative groups to be more efficient with their decision making.
Mhm.
Um, and that was very cool and interesting. You know, it's that my first time building an organization and definitely my interests. Like at first I was interested in software, but pretty soon it realized like I emergently sort of discovered I'm actually much more interested in the interactions between the people and how the organization is designed more than like who cares what color the button is or like how many emails it sends you. Like that's boring, but the organizational dynamics is super fascinating.
Mm. As you were speaking, I noticed my whole body change. Like there was
Mm,
this liberation in my breast, my chest, sort of like everything expanded in some interesting way. And I want to maybe bring in here that I'm studying at the moment systemic collapse a little bit and study also the
hmm
stuff systemic collapse and why systemic collapse happened in our history. And there is this belief that in our ancient ancestors, like 80,000 years ago, we lived in very egalitarian societies and very egalitarian. So there were no hierarchical structures. There was nobody kind of like, I guess, consensus was
hmm
somehow a part of that already then. And then somehow the patriarchy swept over, and power dominance, power over sort of that was our dominant feature. And it took until there was like some democracy in the ancient Greek times. That was the first invention of democracy. But still, then it was only available to the elitarian societies. So, so very different from what you're talking about. Yeah, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And then, do you want to share also more on Microsolidarity, which kind of followed the production of Loomio?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess there's like a middle point in the story, which is Enspiral. So
Oh,
um Enspiral is this network, it's a community, it's people who are they're trying to make a life of meaningful work. So like whatever your job is, that your job actually gives you satisfaction, that it has some kind of intrinsic motivation, like this just feels like an important thing to do in the world. Yeah, it's a network of people that are supporting each other to build a meaningful livelihood for themselves. Um, and that community, like that was like the incubator for Loomio, was like the garden. Like if it wasn't for that, like I don't know, I'm the kind of person that will have an inspiration or a cool idea or think of an invention or something and get really excited about it for 5 minutes. And then 3 days later, you know, another idea comes, or I just move on to the next thing. Like it's very easy for me to get inspired by something. But because I had the community of Enspiral around me, that first idea for Lumio actually had a place to land. It's like putting a seed into a garden instead of just landing on the concrete. And it had this like network of support where people are saying like, hey, I can introduce you to, you need a designer, we've got designers. You need a co-working space, we've got that. Like people are going to create support and accountability for us to actually take that idea and push it forward. And not just like as a business, but more as an individual person. Like I felt like Enspiral was such an instrumental element of my development as an adult, like having these other people around. Like we at Enspiral, we usually go on retreats like maybe twice a year. And some, yeah, some fraction of the retreat is work stuff, and some other part is like deep human stuff. It's building relationships, it's sitting in circles and sharing stories and hearing about people's aspirations and their dreams and their fears. And yeah, there's this like more invisible, emotional, psychological stuff happening there.
Mhm.
And like building this sense of like an extended family that cares about me again was so instrumental for me. Like it's made such a huge impact on my
Mm.
life. And Enspiral kind of developed a reputation in certain circles, and more and more people wanted to join. And at a certain point, we realized that the reason it works so well is because it's small. It's like it's never been more than I think 250 people. It's like small, people can know each other. You can organize on a spirit of like we're all friends here rather than we're a big organization that has all these rules.
Mhm.
And so Microsolidarity comes because, well, we can't have everyone join Enspiral. How do people start more Enspirals? Like, how do you actually, what are the principles? Like, what are the basic patterns? Like, what are the elements you need to create a thriving community of mutual support where people can like be there for each other and make a big difference to each other's lives and create a developmental context? That's the Microsolidarity project. It's like a set of patterns and principles for building communities, rather building these extended families, these networks.
I'm so glad I asked. I didn't even know myself. So, I kind of didn't understand it. And it's interesting, as you were speaking, I noticed the part of me. So I have quite I guess, a lot of trauma around community and belonging for many different reasons. And so I often put myself into the place of, um, I'm not worthy of joining something or participating. Like it's somehow like
Mm,
there's this cool crowd over there, like the Burning Man people or the whatever, the cool people, and I'm not kind of like a part of this, or I can maybe tap my foot in, but I'm never gonna really belong. That's
mm,
like a pattern that I'm working on and healing in many ways.
mm,
But I guess I felt something like that. Like you and I know each other through Stephen Reed, and you are both part of Enspiral, and there was like definitely this desire of like, oh, how can I, participate or be part of this pattern? Like came up.
mm,
So hearing more about micro solidarity in some way feels and empowering actually.
mm,
Yeah, um, to not be dependent on other leaders or facilitators or co-creators that have like a cool idea, but also come up with my own cool ideas, I guess. Yeah, something like that.
yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I really feel like I'm not interested in a future which is like, oh, there's these like three enormous communities that everyone's a part of. Like, to me, it's much more interesting that the skills of community building are very widely distributed, and people know how to initiate something and pull people together, and like that there's just many more hosts and facilitators and organizers in the world. Like to me, I really like the one of the problems I care most about is like how do we go from this isolated, individualistic, kind of lonely or not fully socially satisfied to a kind of social abundance where we've got all of those social needs met and a surplus. And the mechanism to get there, in my perspective, is just like more organizers, more facilitators, more hosts, more people that know how do you take a bunch of individuals and harmonize them into a coherent
Mm,
collective,
mm,
um,
mm.
rather than identifying the one true collective and getting everyone into that. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. You said the word organizing and facilitating, and Spiral is a bit like a meta network for facilitators and organizers. But do you want to share a bit more about your work as a facilitator? Like what do you facilitate and how has that
Mm.
shaped you?
Yeah, I guess it's changed over the years. Like I said, I got really interested in how organizations work
Yeah.
and just like what kind of dynamics get in the way of smooth collaboration. And then that gradually led me to like accidentally, I mean, all of these steps are pretty accidental, but I started training with my wife, Natty. We started training people in collaboration. So that's a kind of facilitation where there's a set of specific insights that you're trying to deliver, and you're trying to find creative ways of inviting people onto some kind of process of discovery where they learn, yeah, the limitations of consensus decision making, for example, or what are the shadows of community that keep you on the outside, or what patterns of conflict arise and like what can we do about them? All those kind of questions to me are really fascinating, and noticing that any organization or any community, they might feel very unique and different, but actually there's certain patterns of dysfunction that seem to arise across many of them.
Mhm.
Um, so I started as a trainer, and then more recently, it's I think of training as like quite a focused, like we're trying to get you somewhere. Um, Whereas lately it's been more of an open-ended facilitation, which is less about the outcome that I'm trying to get to you trying to get you to, and more about creating a container where things emerge, that it's not like I've got a predetermined idea about what's supposed to happen, but just that people feel safe and included and excited and courageous, and that I want to sort of cultivate certain qualities in a group, and then the group does whatever it does. So we opened a retreat center here in Spain like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And we're running lots of events here. This is Casa Tilo.
Yeah.
We're running loads of events, and they're all different flavors. But the theme is like, can we create a harmonious group where people feel awesome to be around each other? And then different stuff emerges from that awesome feeling. Some of it will be, yeah, definitely not my strong suit, but something that I'm happy to witness is that the more emotional processing that people are going through, the more sort of like therapeutic interventions that people are having here.
Yeah.
Um, but just like the stuff that I'm attracted to at the moment, it's almost very mundane. It's like we've got a house here with 10 bedrooms, one big house, 600 square meter house. If we're gonna have a group of people, 10 or 20 people living here for a week or 2 weeks, like how do you do that smoothly where everyone matters, where like that the little frustrations are actually taken care of and used as an opportunity to build more understanding of each other, and like that we can adapt to each other to like make a space that works for everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah, like just creating a happy home for a couple of weeks with a group of people, like that for me is extremely fascinating.
Yeah. Can you give me more details, like a story? Again, I live for comes to
Yeah.
mind more. Can you give?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the people that I'm working with at the moment are pretty strongly suffering from loneliness. Like it's I don't know, it's kind of like awkward topic that we don't like to talk about. Um, but especially since the pandemic, but not just the pandemic. I think the pandemic sort of like accelerated things that were already underway. But I just know a lot of people that don't have many people around them locally that they really feel any kind of solidarity with, any kind of care, any kind of like shared identity. It feels like I'm just surrounded by strangers that don't care about me. This is like a really strong theme.
Yeah.
And at least some of them find some connection online. They're like, okay, there's this interest that I have, and I can find a couple of people that I actually resonate with. I actually share some values with them, and like I can start to build a meaningful relationship, even if it is like on Instagram, and then we move to Zoom, or like this we're in these very unsatisfying digital environments, but at least you can feel something resonant about the person. Um, and one of the things that's been happening in Casa Tilo is like kind of getting those people together. Like, hey, let's spend a week or two together. And that, yeah, it's incredible watching the impact that has on some people.
Mm.
Like there's a baseline which is like we're having a nice time. It's like a great holiday or something. Okay, that's nice. But
Mhm.
there's something more intense happening for some people here, which is like you mentioned about the shadows of community. Like, for example, a friend of mine has this very traumatic history with community, including being in cults, and like a lot of really nasty stuff happened. And so she has got this huge skepticism of groups, reasonably so, like this really deep trauma that keeps her very cautious about how she interacts with groups. And for her to spend a week in a group of trustworthy people where there's like trustworthy leadership, and there's like, yeah, dependable boundaries, and people treat each other with respect, and your voice matters. And yeah, I don't want to give too much of her story away, but like when she left after a week here, she left looking like a different person, like a different voice, a different
Mm.
pattern of facial tension, like her face changed, her voice changed. She became a different person
Mm.
because it was like she stopped fighting or
Mm.
stopped having to be constantly on the defensive and just like allowed herself to be embraced by these people actually care in a genuine way and they're not trying to manipulate you into something like they're just open-hearted. They're just genuinely trustworthy, safe people. Um, yeah, there's lots of these kind of moments happening, which I'm like, oh, I really don't want to tell people's private stories here, but people basically having really deep trauma healing, primarily due to the fact that it's just a wholesome group and that they haven't had much experience with a wholesome group. And to find a wholesome group where they feel some sense of belonging and like they care, the people care about them and they matter, it's like really moving them in a deep way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel really touched.
Hmm.
We talked just before we started this podcast a little bit about the family dynamics and how they interact and influence our community.
Yeah.
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 And there's a big,
It's so intense. Yeah, I think what I wanted to say about that was like because of my experience with Occupy, Occupy was very chaotic, but the one point of agreement we all had was like there's no hierarchy. Um, that's why everything was done by consensus. It's like we're just trying to include everyone and no one's going to be in charge. And so I spent a long time working with non-hierarchical organizations and trying to help them understand how to do that gracefully and effectively.
Mhm.
And, it's like nearly 15 years now since Occupy. Um, and I'm still deeply committed, like you can hear the stories I'm telling, I'm still deeply committed to these principles of inclusion and collaboration and so on. But
Mhm.
I've got much more wary about non-hierarchy um, as a mode of organizing, like that with certain people in certain contexts, it works to like create this horizontal group where everyone has equal power, but it's pretty rare to find those groups. Um, I've worked with a lot of them that have failed in quite dramatic ways and like quite painful ways. Um, and it's because I think a big part of it, I think, is because of the family dynamics that like we're building an organization or we're building a community and we have all these different people that are coming from different contexts with different expectations and different history, different culture.
Yeah.
But the one thing everyone has in common was when you were born, you were a baby that was helpless, and there was a parent or there was some other adults around that were your like life and death caretakers. Literally, like you could do nothing, and it was completely up to them.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the earliest programming that we have in our consciousness and our sense of self and our sense of interacting with others. Our earliest programming is I'm helpless and there's an adult out there that knows what's going on and that sort of keeps me safe and sets the parameters of what my life looks like. Everyone shows up with that imprint. And so then when we say we're going to be non-hierarchical or everyone's going to be equal, you're fighting against that deepest level of programming, which is happening like right down there with your instincts. Like it's right down there with the like when I touch a hot stove, I pull my hand away without thinking about it. It's happening at that same level. It's like your core conditioning. And so now I'm not so fanatical about trying to make everyone equal. I'm more like, okay, let's work with people's conditioning around hierarchy and just do it skillfully, like
Mm.
do it with my eyes open. So like, um, you would have to ask someone who's not me because I'm just going to obviously think that I'm great. But um, I, we've had 12 retreats here since we opened in April. And all 12 of them have been really harmonious, like really noticeably harmonious, that the group is flowing. This is real like effortlessness. And I think a big part of that is because Nati and me are in charge. And the way that we own that power, the way that we own that leadership is like it works for people.
Mm.
That we're really clear, this is our space, you're in our space. Like
Mm.
we ultimately have the authority to say who's in and who's out, what the rules are. Um, but we're also not dominating. We're not really trying to get up in your space and micromanage you, but we are going to hold some sort of like minimum. authority threshold at the outside to like keep things safe and keep it working for everyone.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not a big it's not a big focal point. It's not like if you interviewed all the guests that come here, they would say, "Oh, the leadership was so such and such." No, it's like it's mostly invisible. Like it's not like a big dramatic point of focus.
Mhm.
But just quietly, everyone or the vast majority of people that come have sort of signed up for like, "Hey, we trust in your leadership. Like we know that we're in your space, and we're gonna show you some respect. You know, like we're gonna be considerate of what you want, what you need, and factor that in with what we're doing."
Mhm.
And that, yeah, this is very unfamiliar for me to be like talking about this, but it's like um, what I imagine an ideal sort of developmental process. You start as this helpless baby,
Uh-huh.
and then as you grow up, you gradually become more and more empowered, and it's like, oh wow, at a certain point, I can take care of myself.
Yeah.
And ideally, your parents or your caretakers would be like kind of handing over more and more autonomy to you until the point where you're like fully independent and able to just like make your own decisions.
Mhm.
That would be ideally how it goes. And of course, most people don't actually experience that with the way that they're raised. They usually have some combination of like their parents were usually like either overbearing or neglectful. You know, they're like either like really try and constrain your freedom and push you to be something that you're not, or they put their hands off and you're left like with no guidance when you needed it and you make a mess either way. And so like I think we're aspiring here with our leadership is to find that sweet spot where we're not dominating, but we're not neglecting either. We're present and available and we're not putting our weight where it's not needed. Um, yeah, this is just the sense that I'm making of it at the moment, but I think this is contributing to the really wholesome group vibes that we're getting here.
So powerful and inspiring to have a little bit of an insight into how you maybe approach leadership in that sense of like, it's not power over, it's not power under, it's like power with. Maybe another way of phrasing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that power with, I think, as I understand power with, it's like um our power here comes from the people showing up and deciding to trust us.
Mhm.
It's not coming from us being forceful. It's from people saying, yeah, this is a good, and it's temporary. That's a big part of it as well. It's like a temporary moment in time where they say, I'm willing to follow your lead for the week that I'm here. And they can retract that at any moment, you know, like that actually in some sense the power is with them. Like I'm the one implementing it, but they're the ones that actually decide where it goes. And if I lose people's trust, then it's like I'm out. You immediately would have a rebellion.
Mhm. I'm gonna put a pin here. I want to circle back to this point of leadership, but I want to also hear a little bit of like an experience of a retreat at Casa Tilo. Like, what would that look like
Mm.
for people maybe who listen and are curious about joining? Like, can you share a little bit more about what a journey like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing, because it's new, we're like still experimenting, so we're trying different things.
Yeah.
Um, the way I currently see it, like, yeah, you can kind of infer from what I've said so far something about my vision for the world, like just more connection.
Yeah.
Um, and so like the big picture is, yeah, we wanna help along, we want to create a world that has much more community, much more care, much more solidarity.
Mhm.
And we're going to play some role in that. And at the baseline, there's this thing I said, like I said, the mundane stuff of living together, the sort of the domestic reality of what's our daily rhythms. So like regardless of what retreat we're doing, there's going to be some kind of baseline of we're going to have a regular point of contact where everyone gets to see each other, and there'll be some kind of yeah, some kind of sensing into what do we want to do as a group and what's not working well, like where are the points of frustration and tension, and like what are efficient ways that we can deal with that tension. So there's this baseline which is just like co-living, essentially, just like eating meals together, having the minimum number of like really lightweight meetings so that frustrations get dissolved as quick as possible.
Mhm.
And then on top of that baseline, you have like specific themes. So we had a retreat here last week called Unfolding Together, and this was like really focused on social change, people mostly like looking at the intersection between the inner development and then the outer change that we're trying to have in the world. So like we'd spend the morning in like quite heavily facilitated um, like relational practices, meditation, open expanding awareness practices that are sort of like helping you get in touch with that bigger, more spiritual part of the sacred union wholeness stuff.
Mhm.
And then in the afternoon, it's like, okay, we've all got projects that we're working on. Let's get organized into our projects and like help each other out. So we're sort of like oscillating. We spent the week kind of oscillating between the expanded awareness and then the more focused, like get stuff done energy.
Yeah.
So that's like a specific retreat we did for a specific group of people that yeah, that are really drawn to that modality.
Okay.
Um, we've got one coming up in March. Nati is a psychedelic guide, so it's just going to be about microdosing as a strategy for behavior change. So that again, it'll be a week, and this is for people that are interested in that particular topic and want to go deep on this and learn more about
Mhm.
how psilocybin affects your neuroplasticity and like what kind of changes you want to make in your life. Um, January, we're doing 2 events around leadership. So one is like people who are already senior leaders and just getting them together in a space of peer support where we don't have to bring any programming, but they're just going to be having some companionship and talking about the things that they lose sleep over at night. And then the other one is more of a training, more of a like for up and coming leaders to learn some of the skills, some of the ways of leading a group that, the kind of values that I'm trying to demonstrate here, like how does that actually turn into making decisions and getting organized and yeah, creating action. So yeah, there's this like baseline of healthy, wholesome co-living and then specific modules that are more focused on specific themes and topics.
Great. And did I pick up that there is an opportunity also to just come in like at specific times and just hang out or?
Sometimes, yeah, this is part of the experiment as well, is like we're learning how much, because this is our home,
Yeah,
we're learning how much privacy do we need and how public we can be.
sure.
So at the moment, there's nothing on the website about just drop in, but it will be coming soon. Like we're going into like a planning phase, so like probably in the next month or so, there'll be more opportunities for people to just come. Yeah, we'll often have people just in a very relaxed, like come and spend a week with us. Yeah, there's no strong theme or strong programming, but we live in a 15,000 hectare national forest, like incredible, beautiful forest.
Mhm.
Um, an hour outside of the city, like super accessible, but completely calm and peaceful. It's just like a good place, a really good place to hang out.
Yeah,
So you don't even need a specific training module or something or some specific practices. Just chill under the trees and
yeah.
enjoy the sunshine in Barcelona.
Meet Richard and Natty. Yeah. Okay. Talking about you two, and the pin I set around leadership, I would love to explore a little bit, like maybe the path of your relationship that led you to create
Mm,
this project.
mm. I love talking about that. Yeah, that's my favorite topic.
Right.
Um, so so I went to the Occupy movement with very little exposure to activism or any kind of countercultural way of seeing the world or anything. And everything was brand new and overwhelming and kind of exciting and very radical. And that's where I met Nati. And I couldn't understand what was going on because it was just like everything was scrambling my brain. But I slowly sort of started to pick up the sense that like wherever Nati goes, there's like this field of harmony expanding around her. Like that somehow through all the chaos and like all these different people that have all these different beliefs and there's like antagonism and tension and stuff going on, somehow she is creating this like field where things harmonize, things go well, that people get on, that people feel heard, that they kind of settle, that the nervous system drops,
Mm,
that she's like a grounding presence somehow.
mm,
And like I say, I couldn't really understand what was going on, but I was very attracted to it. And so I just was like, I want to spend time with you and understand what you're doing because there's some kind of magic trick going on. Um, and then I employed her to work with us at Loomio, which was a really good decision. I was like invented this reason that we needed. She's from Argentina, so I invented the reason that we needed a Spanish translator. So- and then like slowly but surely, we fell in love, and I was I don't know, very immature, I guess. Like I really didn't know what I was doing in relationships, and was really not. I hadn't learned about commitment or about consistency yet,
Mm.
until yeah, I don't know how much of our story I want to tell, but we had this I don't know, like a dilemma, or like one of these points of focus where it's like, okay, I have to either learn how to show up and be consistent,
Mm.
or I'm going to lose this woman.
Mm.
And I like, okay, I really don't want to lose her, so I'm going to try and be consistent, um, and make a commitment to like actually be present with this person.
Mm.
And since then, that was like 2016 or something.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, since then she's just been my person, and like uh everything when I project myself into the future, it's like taking into consideration her line into the future as well.
Mm.
And all the stuff that we're doing, like this project now, this Casa Tilo, it's like really the intersection between her vision and mine. Like what is it that's most inspiring for both of us to be focused on? And we just really have become like I don't know, like a single animal with two heads, like there's like two halves of the same thing,
Mm.
with these like complementary strengths. So like I'm always the one doing the podcast. I'm always like blah 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 blah. But she's the one that actually models the way of being, and like um yeah, transmits something at a more subtle frequency that's not we always say like she shows and I tell, like that there's this dynamic that we have between us. Um, I'm like insanely optimistic. She's really critical. Like we have these like complementarities and like how we see the world and how we work that just like adds up to a much stronger unit than what we could do on our own. Um, she's like I said about doing the psychedelic guidance, like she's really deep in one-on-one work with people. I'm much more interested in the group. There's like all this. She's really introverted. I'm really extroverted. She likes to be on her own. I like to have like 100 people around. Like there's this complementarity that creates a more wholesome whole in either of us on our own.
Creates a lot of interesting tension, I imagine, too. And
Yeah.
I'm curious about this tension in the framework of moving beyond patriarchy and non-hierarchy. How did
Mm.
or how did you deal with that in your relationship to come to a really equal place? If that was,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So when first we started a company called The Hum, which is our training company.
Yeah.
And when we started it, like all of the content for this training was like all mine. It was all stuff that I'd written, presentations I'd given, like ideas of mine.
Yeah.
And we did a bunch of workshops together where she was kind of like essentially a kind of assistant. She's like a helper for me. And when we finished that first round of workshops, she was just like, I mean, this is not satisfying. I don't want to be your helper. And so we had to go through a process together of like reconstructing, okay, what actually is our content? What actually is our curriculum? What do we actually want to teach people? And again, like I think I'm good on concepts, but she's way better than me on like process design. Like how do you actually guide someone or invite someone to a process of discovery? She's way better at that. I'm like, here's the answer. She's like, yeah, that's pointless. Like how do you actually get someone to discover their own answer? Um, so we had to rebuild everything in our training, so that it was actually co-authored. Uh, and I think that, it's like a small piece of our life, but I think that lesson of like, yeah, I can't just be the author with some helpers. I need to be a co-author. I think that yeah, activated some kind of new understanding about what a partnership actually looks like.
Okay. And I want to just pause you there also because it's a common theme in like more patriarchal relationship dynamics that often women don't tell the truth. There's a difficulty of like saying what's really going on. So I see like an example of her just coming out with what was really going on for her and you listening.
Hmm. Yeah, but she's a big truth teller. I think that's always been the way. Yeah, I think, I said it when I first met her that she had some kind of harmonizing force. I think that's part of it, is actually like
Wow.
not the harmony that's from let's be fake and pretend everything's nice, but like let's actually I'm going to be myself in a way that enables other people to be themselves, and then we can actually learn how to be with each other.
Mm,
That comes from a certain grounded and direct, some kind of courageous spirit.
mhm. And then how did you both end up buying into, I think it's a lease, Casa Tilo, but I don't know if that's
Yeah,
right. How did
yeah.
you tie that vision together?
Um, she started it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um, when we were in Italy at the start of the lockdown,
Yeah.
um, living in like a really crappy apartment with no sunshine in a town where we didn't know anyone. It was just like the ultimate bad place for us to live. And she just was like, "What the hell are we doing? How did we?" Like she did before she met me, she did a lot of traveling around like eco villages. She studied permaculture. She's been all over the world to all these like, Oroville and all these communities.
Mhm.
And she was like, "What the hell? Like, how did I live in an apartment where I don't know anyone uh, in this random part of the world?" And so she started a conversation with a bunch of different friends, saying, "Hey, I've always dreamed about a more communal way of living.
Mhm.
Can we actually start getting organized?
Mhm.
Can we make progress on it?" And so yeah, she started the conversation, and then it I guess it just matured based on like for us, the vision is like we want to live in a neighborhood. We want to have people around us that it's not a commune. It's not like we all see the world the same way and everyone's like locked into a thing, but a neighborhood where people have their own privacy, but that they have chosen to be near to each other because there's some calling, some overlap in what we care about. Um, And for us to get to that neighborhood, our Casa Tilo is kind of like our stepping stone to get there. It's like based on the skills and the networks, the opportunities we have, we can make a business out of running retreats.
Mhm.
And that business, we're hoping, if it goes well, like in the next couple of years, should generate enough of a solid revenue stream that we can afford to buy a place or at least get financing to buy a place.
Yeah.
So it's like a money thing, but it's also a people thing that like every couple of weeks there's another 10 or 20 people showing up and we get to say like, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. Uh, Kind of have a little bit of a dating process of like, would you want to live in our neighborhood kind of thing. Um, so yeah, it's like definitely overlapped our shared vision, but also definitely she started it.
Wonderful. I love that. Um, and I can also see the uh, advantage of like increasing your network and like already kind of creating the path for that bigger vision,
Yeah.
which is interesting in itself. Like, because I'm really interested in how do people start bigger projects? Like, what's the path? So yeah, just getting a feel for how different people show up for that.
Yeah. And my answer to that is like it's all about taking measured steps that gradually increase. Um and we did a prototype of this last year. We did a 3-month thing in the south of Spain. Very similar, but just smaller scale, lower risk. Got to learn a whole bunch of things, got to sort of put ourselves out in the world and say, hey, we're doing co-living now. Who's interested?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and then this place we've like committed for a year. Well, actually, we're probably committed for multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's like taking these steps up and increasing risk and scale and responsibility and yeah, learning. And I'm feeling in myself like, oh, I'm not quite up for the job. Like I have to learn and grow. Like this is not going to succeed until I change. And so it's like trying to match the learning curve so that I'm yeah growing at a sustainable rate and not actually putting myself way in the deep end where I can't succeed at all.
Yeah, I hear that. Seems really relevant in terms of what the nervous system is able to hold and to also where the self-trust comes in, right? Like I can
Yeah,
take on a big enough project like this because I have the trust and grow in it.
yeah,
Okay, beautiful. Um, my last question to you is connected to this, vision that you talked about of like wanting more collaboration to happen around the world. And you mentioned also throughout this podcast a few stories of like what transformed in people when they showed up in Casa Tilo and what
Mm.
the impact is. But I would love to dream big a little bit. And I mentioned the word systemic collapse at some point. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of our future and where we are heading. But let's say the world would collaborate more. Everybody would collaborate with each other more. What do you think would change, or what's an opportunity there?
I try to match my vision to my capacity and not get too hypnotized by the big picture. Um, like I try to understand what am I actually capable of, what's the scale where I can be effective,
Mm.
and almost like ignore things that are happening at a larger scale because I'm like, I don't think I'm effective. I don't think I've got, much influence on what Donald Trump's going to do next or something like that. But I do have an influence on like my immediate community and my neighborhood. Um, so like I kind of keep my head down a little bit and just try and focus on what I can contribute. Um, but the vision I have is like that our place is part of a. Sometimes we talk about the Camino, like the new Camino, the new Camino de Santiago, like this pilgrimage where people who are longing for something, they have a sense that there's a different way of living. They have a sense that there's a much more satisfying, more connected, more alive, more energized way of being that they've kind of imagined or dreamed but never quite seen. That the idea with the pilgrimage is that there's like many places like Casa Tilo, that there's many hubs where you can visit and get connected to your inspiration and your vision and meet people that actually echo back your values to you and say, yes, you're on the right path, let's keep going. That it's a space to, it's the kind of space where you decide to quit your job and commit to doing the artistic practice or the spiritual practice or the more meaningful thing than the corporate world that you had been living in. It's the kind of space where um, you meet your best friends for life, or you meet your partner that you're going to die with, or that these like crucial kind of formative experiences happen. And it's not just our one little isolated hub in the middle of nowhere, but like you can come here and then you can hike for 3 days, and then there's another one, and then you hike for another 3 days, and then there's another one and another one. They've all got these different flavors. This one's more about work, and that one's more about dance, and that one's more about sexuality, and that they've got these different flavors. This is already well underway. Like we've already got a long list of siblings that are like us, and that list is growing by the day. Like that, we're establishing this kind of quiet underground revolutionary countercultural distributed network of developmental spaces where people can embrace a different way of living. And I just see them becoming more resilient, more empowered, more sustainable, and more attractive. That like as old systems collapse, as people get less satisfied with old ways of doing things, that there's an alternative that's just sitting there and it's fun, and that it's like it's a more attractive alternative than scrolling endlessly on your phone by yourself in your apartment. Like people want to be together. And that we've figured out some of the shortcomings of like what's hard about being together, and that we've designed good systems that make it work. Um, I really like, I don't really want to change anyone, but I do want the people that are hungry for this kind of thing to know that these spaces are available, and that there's like many, many thousands of people that are excited to be part of it, like an alternative way of life.
Yeah.
And that we're growing power, like that we're growing a counter power that's like much more wholesome than the stuff you usually see on the internet or on the news, or like there's a good alternative place to be, and it's growing. Like we're already living in the vision. We just want more people to come on in.
It's on the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a saying that I often remember that do you know Ramdas? He was asked like, what are we going to do if the world collapses or something like that? And he said, well, I'm not interested so much in like the answer, but if the world doesn't collapse, like what you have to do is to focus your mind and to keep your heart open. And if the world will collapse, you have to focus your mind and keep your heart open. it's sort of like one way or another, just keep doing the right thing that you believe in. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've gone through a similar process, like very explicitly gone through the multiple years of contemplating collapse.
Interestingly, just as we were talking about systemic collapse, Richard's internet collapsed, and we decided that this was a good ending to our conversation, and we left it there. Before we leave, interestingly, just as we were talking about this hot topic of societal collapse, Richard's internet collapsed, and we decided that this was actually an interesting ending, and we left it there. Before we go, I am inviting you to slow down for a moment and to feel into yourself what this conversation touched in you. Where are you at in terms of being part of one or multiple nourishing, supportive communities where you can collaborate and co-create with others? Or are you more on the other side of the spectrum and you long for being part of a community, but you don't know how to make it happen just yet? Either way, you should check out some of Richard's offerings, and you will find lots of interesting links in the show notes. Also, his website is there, and also Microsolidarity, the network that helps you to build community. I want to remind you that it really helps to give this video or podcast a like. It helps us to get the word out, so please do that now. And if you want to support the creation of this podcast, it really helps to sign up for my newsletter. Who reads emails nowadays? Well, in fact, hundreds of people read my newsletter every week because they feel transformed by it. I share with an authentic voice about my own life experiences in sex, love, and relationships. I ask philosophical questions and also share practical tools that help you to feel more, to have better sex and better relationships. I also share in there my latest offerings, which is the way how you can really support this podcast. I have a relationship alchemy program, which is for couples who want to end the power struggle. And I'm also offering sacred sexuality courses every year and soul initiation, a 1 year long full initiation program for people who are ready to step into soul purpose and change the world with me. I love you so much. Thank you for being here with me. Until next time.